Good afternoon. This is The Pulse. I am Daniel Daze. In our top story, Sanitation Minister Cecilia Abena-Dapaah says Ghana is 85% through with making Accra the cleanest city in Africa. Today, we interrogate this claim with a coalition of NGOs in water and sanitation. In Parliament, Education Minister Dr. Matthew Opoku-Prempeh touts his administration's delivery of the manifesto promise to transform Ghana's education sector. We're live in the House as the minority refutes his claims. And in our series on conversations with independent presidential aspirants, we speak to the man who took on a minister. Koranteng, who delivered that memorable response to Robert Ahomkalinse's whining comment, is our guest as we count down to the minority political parties and independent candidates debate. My name is Daniel Daze. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. And we're 85% through with making Accra the cleanest city in Africa. That's according to Sanitation Minister Cecilia Abena-Dapaah. In 2017, President Akufo-Addo declared his government's intention of making Ghana's capital the cleanest on the continent by the end of his 4-year term. Some members of the public have cast doubt over the possibility of achieving that target. But speaking to the media as part of a sanitation tour and cleanup exercise in parts of Mamobi today, the Sanitation Minister said 100% was achieved during the lockdown, but alleged the odds have reduced due to citizens' activity.
We are here to assess the situation of environmental cleanliness and general sanitation, because we are doing sanitation or cleaning every day. But some issues like clogging the drains becomes a bigger issue for the residents. Hence, the presence of Zoom Lion and the squad or team, the military, to assess the situation, because normally we work hand in hand with them, and then the assembly also. So we came here this morning to assess the situation and to make sure the drains are rid of these plastics, because if they are not removed, access for water flow will be difficult. Hence the gathering of mosquitoes, etc., and it leads to whatever. So we want to prevent cholera, we want to prevent malaria, we want to prevent diseases that might break up. And then at the same time sensitize the residents to be sure of cleaning the environment, because it is their primary responsibility. When you leave your home with the waste and you come and throw it in the drain, you are an irresponsible citizen. But the president wants us all to be responsible citizens. So when we don't do these things of throwing garbage into the drains will be clearer and neater, and our homes also will be clean, because the assembly will send the aboboyas round to pick the waste. That's what we want. I want to encourage the ESPA policy. We endorse it 110% of one house, one bin. This is what we are trying also to tell them. You saw the man with the mic. It's all sensitization and persuasion. Yes.
How effective would you say the district assemblies have been in this battle? It seems most of the time
he's here. I assess them. The work is not easy for them. I insist. You saw the cows. They are here today. Tomorrow he will come. You won't see them. But when they are seen, you heard the environmental officer saying they should issue summons. When they see, they act. When in the dead of the night, someone carries waste and throws it, they won't be here. That's why the sensitization is very, very, very paramount, to make sure people are sensitized as to how they should handle the solid waste. The clearest and easiest way is to get a bin. If you get one, I get one, we won't throw garbage into the drains. Yes.
And one of the promises elections was to make Accra the cleanest city.
Yes, and you saw it during the lockdown.
Yes. How far would that promise?
I will give it 85%, because at the end of the day, you all saw the 100% we did during the lockdown. So who makes Accra dirty? Us. that's why we are every day sensitizing people to make sure. I'm telling you, I know you will quote it, and I insist it's 85. You will rate it maybe 100%. Thank you.
Now, meanwhile, the people of Mamobi have expressed gratitude for the exercise, but they say they are in dire need of public toilet facilities as open defecation persists. They told JoyNews' PSA Nanaya Safo that the only closest toilet available has been locked in a political brawl between the NPP and the NDC over who manages.
Any public toilet too. I'm not way. Maybe I have 2 years. I'm not on a toilet. A public toilet or a friend NDC. I'm a former close people for buy no. Almost is it a papa B or MPP almost is it a man.
MPP first is the public toilet.
Because of your friend NDC.
I do see favor Sahini.
Fair toilet crowd close here. MPP are more power. Yeah, 1 year more as a confusion no close to toilet. And no more toilet. Any toilet or any public toilet. So my public toilet now, I'm not way. Yeah, to me close.
Okay. So, Baba Amando is a resident here. He's in Mamobi, Nima side. He tells me that they used to have a public toilet facility in this community that they affectionately called NDC. No particular reason attached to that. But since the current government came into power, some faithfuls or some alleged faithfuls of the MPP have shut down the public toilet facility, saying that it's closed to use from members of the community. Thus, they resort to open defecation to ease themselves within the facility. He's calling on authorities to come to their aid.
We are really suffering because we don't have a public toilet here. So more than a year now, and we are really suffering a lot. You can see our surroundings. It's very, very bad. So the boys here, everybody is going in here to, ease themselves.
And that is my asking, but you're a woman. A woman has certain needs. Where do you ease yourself?
It's really bad. I can't even tell because I'm even shy to say it. You see, I'm even shy to say it. It's very, very bad. And I'll plead for the government to really help us with the public toilets. Yeah, you see, because of the surrounding here, we are not able to, even if you are trying to clean, it's not going to work because of there is no public toilet here. So I'm pleading they should help us with the public toilet. That will at least go far with us more.
The public toilet that we have is only one, but someone is claiming that the toilet belongs to him, which is not fair. You see, the public toilet is for the community, it's not for somebody.
About how many people here are using that, even if it's open, how many people here are using that facility?
Okay, let's see. Like I can't tell.
But about how many? If you are... Many people. You say 100 or 200?
Yeah, like 100 plus. You see, which is not fair. And
just walk us through. How was this public toilet closed in the first place? Who closed it?
Like, you see the NDC era, the assemblyman of this area, like, he is in charge of the toilet because he is the assemblyman.
What's his name?
Alaja Aruna. That's the assemblyman, the former assemblyman. So which is like, now that during the election, because that is like the MPP person is now on. So they don't want to hand over the toilet to him, which is, he claims as if like the toilet belongs to him alone.
So what happens when you go there? Is it locked?
Yeah, it's locked. It's locked. Because there was a serious confusion over the toilets, which is unfair. You see, that's why people normally use this bowl, you see, which is not fair. Look how this, it's not fair.
So you're telling me that right here, that's where people ease themselves daily?
Daily. That's where people used to ease themselves. Because we don't have anywhere to go. Where do we go?
And as community members, explain the filth here. Why don't you organize yourselves and do something about it?
We can't do anything about this thing. Because today, I can't be here like to be a vigilante watching over this. You see, when you talk An old person will come out and be like, why are you people doing this? The person will be like, no, you've disrespected the person, which is unfair. You see, we are talking about a community. We aren't talking about like disrespecting somebody. So we need to change.
So in summary, for your fellow residents, for government and all others watching, what would you say if they are watching you right now? What was your important message that you want Ghanaians to know about this place?
I want Ghanaians to know that this place is this place is not clean, because there are a lot of filthy here. You can see it. You can see it for yourself. You see, there are too much rubbish over, which is unfair. You see, all this can cause like malaria. People getting gonorrhea, like cholera, which is unfair. There's no money. There's no money in this society. So people we need to change.
Behind me, as you can see, is the public toilet facility. 2 sets of buildings merged into one, although uncompleted and very unstable from the point where it is located. This building, we are told, is the bane of contention between the MPP and NDC youth groups right here in Malmobi, such that it's quite hard for any of them to access the facilities, particularly the opposition members who want to use the loo, so to speak. But as you can see in the background here, the public toilet facility and open defecation is not the only, or in fact the least of their worries right here in Malmobi.
Now let's have a conversation on this very interesting assessment by the Sanitation Minister. Joining us via Zoom is the Coalition of NGOs in Water and Sanitation. Arthur Ahin is actually Vice Chairman for CONIWAS, and he's joined us. Now, Mr. Ahin, is 85% a fair representation of the sanitation situation in Accra or even across the country?
Thank you very much. Let me say good afternoon to your viewers. It's not something that we can confirm. I mean, we do not have the indicators. We do not have the justification. And so if there is any set of indicators that the minister is using, well, I am not privy to that. As far as I'm aware, there is no strategic plan for achieving this vision. We have not cited any plan. We say that this and this are what we are going to do to become the cleanest city in Africa. Well, it is true that some positive developments have happened in recent times, and we all admit to that, and we commend the minister and the ministry for taking the initiatives, especially also in partnership with private sector players like Zoom Lion and other service providers. Quite a lot has happened in this direction during the COVID-19 period. The intensified distribution of bins, cleanup exercises, and all that have happened. But I am not too sure that these will translate immediately into achieving 85% of this vision. It is not something that we have done an assessment on. And if you push me, I will say it is something that is likely not to be so, because it takes a lot more to be able to achieve that high level. And let me remind you that as a country, we still have 22% of our population defecating in the open. About 25% of the population are patronizing public toilets. 21%, only 21% has access to improved toilet facilities.
Right.
You go to our schools and the story is the same.
Right.
70% of waste is collected through door-to-door and municipal arrangements. And so it will be difficult for us to believe that all of a sudden we can move to 85%.
Let me refer you to a publication by a Kenyan news portal, which ranks Accra as third cleanest city in the country, after Kigali, which comes first, and Windhoek in Namibia, which comes second. And we understand that this is a source from UGC, of course, and we understand that even some 5 months ago, Accra was actually placed at number 2. after Kigali in Rwanda. Now, does this not suggest that perhaps we should be looking at this in a more comparative sense as opposed to the figures you churn out, which are national in figure, in character, I mean?
Yes, I agree with you that if you are talking about Accra becoming the cleanest city in Africa, yes, you have to do a comparative analysis. But, I mean, some of us have traveled to some African countries, and I'm sure you have also. And sometimes when you see the difference, nobody should tell you that we are a little way, further, down the ladder. And I think that we need to do a lot more. Of course, many African countries also have similar situations. But I believe that we should not be comparing ourselves to those who are already down there. I think that there are best practices in Africa. You mentioned Kigali. There are some other African countries who are doing much better in terms of cleanliness in their cities. And I think those are the countries we should be looking at. Let me also mention that I have not witnessed increased financing in recent times. And these are some of the things you look out for when you want to see whether we are making improvement or not. We have not seen increased financing. We have not seen improved law enforcement. We have not seen any sustained public education. We are not seeing structured support to the waste management companies. And if we are able to resource the waste management companies, then we will be seeing a lot more from them, because let me tell you that we have one of the best, or some of the best waste management companies in Africa.
Right.
And I think that we only need to resource them just a little, and they will do, marvelously well.
So how would you rate government then? How would you rate government? What percentage figure would you give government?
It will be difficult for me, and I don't want to hazard any guess, because I have not seen the blueprint. We have not developed indicators. And these are the areas where we expect that government will work closely with civil society so that we can develop the indicators together and track them together. But without having the indicators, it will be difficult for me to, guess. But my recommendation will be that let's resource environmental service providers adequately, waste management companies. If we could have 10 Zoom Lions in Ghana, you can imagine how this country will be. Let's invest in material recovery, treatment, composting, and recycling of waste. But for me, I don't think that we are anywhere near 85% in terms of achieving the president's vision of making Accra the cleanest city in Africa.
You mentioned that civil society should have been consulted in developing indicators, for instance. Does it mean that even for measuring of the progress that government has made, government is doing this all alone?
Of course, we have been in consultation with government and the ministry on several other things, development of policies and strategies, plans, and all that. But as far as I'm concerned, there was very little involvement of civil society in, for example, the launching of the National Sanitation Campaign, and also the declaration of Accra becoming the cleanest city in Africa. Very little from civil society in terms of inputs. And I am saying that going forward, we need to work closely together, because if we are going to track progress, we will be tracking them together. Civil society in Ghana has a lot of capacity. And if we are able to work with them closely, I think that we should be able to find innovative solutions to the sanitation challenges that confront this country.
Aren't we speaking of this a bit late in the day, the fact that government should have involved civil society, because we have just a few months to go to the deadline of this promise, which is the end of the first term of the president?
Yes, you see, as a civil society coalition, what we do is to offer support to government in terms of policy development, implementation, monitoring, evaluation, tracking of performance, review, and all that. we have been in touch with government. In terms of the National Sanitation Campaign, for example, we have done a comprehensive assessment of the President's directives on the day he launched the campaign. And we have rated it in terms of yellow, red, yellow, or green. And the report is available. We have shared it widely. It's also on the internet. But I'm saying that on this very one, I am not aware of any document, not any indicators, which will point us to what to look out for if we are going to assess. Perhaps what we need to do is to do our own set of indicators we think should happen in Accra becoming the cleanest city in Africa. And that's, I assure you, we will do. And then when we are done, I think that we'll publish our findings for Ghanaians to see. And then we'll also give our recommendations.
Which is interesting, Mr. Ahin, because one would have expected that for a measure as international as the cleanest city in Africa, it will not be left to governments to develop how they are going to be measured. Don't these measures already exist? Don't we already have international bodies dedicated to sanitation and clean water, which are already measuring these?
Oh, yes. I mean, when you talk about the broader water and sanitation sector, we have standard indicators that we use to measure. And that one is ongoing. We have been doing that. But, you know, this is a peculiar project. This is something that is a vision of the president. And once the president speaks, we are happy because we believe that appointees will get into action and begin to put things together. But so far, let me be frank with you, in terms of the policy of making Accra the cleanest city in Africa, I am yet to see the set of indicators we are working with. I am yet to see the kind of programs we are rolling out. I am yet to see the financing for this. And so it is quite difficult for us to be able to speak to this. I mean, now that the minister has, given a rating, maybe we can also quickly do a quick assessment and then come out with our own findings. But as far as I'm aware, we do not have any such indicators available for this particular project.
Right, it's a bit difficult to appreciate when you say that there has been no funding line, because this is expected to be the broad vision, and the budgetary allocations, the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources, should be geared towards achieving this altogether. Is that not the case?
Yes, that is the case. I mean, that is the expectation, that the budget of the ministry will go into this, to achieving this. But when you have a budget that does not change significantly from previous years, it's difficult for you to appreciate what level of funding we are putting into this. And like I said, we don't need to even put too much into this because we already have private sector who are doing very, very well. We just need to resource them. We just need to support them to be able to deliver. And from where I sit, I am saying that the support to these private sector players is not something that we expected.
Mr.
We expect a lot more support for these private sector players.
Mr. Ahin, you mentioned support to private sector as a place that is lacking. But I'm asking a question about the overall commitment of governments to the achievement of this. And my question here is that, should we not be measuring the budget lines by simply what the Sanitation Ministry is doing in their budget? Because that is what should be going to, achieve the overall aim of making Accra the cleanest city in Africa.
Sorry, I didn't hear the last bit.
I'm saying that, should we not just be tracking what the Sanitation Ministry is doing with what monies they have been allocated in the budget?
Yeah, and I am saying that from where I sit, very little goes into the sanitation subsector. Very, very little.
How much goes
into it? Very little goes into that. In fact, every year, if you are aware, we do a budget analysis. We are yet to do that for this year, for obvious reasons. But we will do it. But I can tell you that the amount we expect to go into the sanitation subsector does not go. We expect a lot more to be able to, achieve improved sanitation. You need to invest a lot more in the sanitation subsector.
In 2018,
and so far, we are not seeing that kind of investment.
In 2018, we found that about In 2018, we found that about $300 million goes into sanitation in the country every year. Is that a figure you dispute?
No, it's not a figure I dispute. But you see, the sanitation sector requires a lot more. Perhaps, I mean, if I show you the investment plan for the sector, then you appreciate how much should go into the sector annually.
Can you give us an idea
with how much goes into it annually in practical terms?
Can you give us an idea how much you expect
the
to go
levels
into it?
Funding are quite low.
Can you give us an idea how much you expect to go into it? Can you give us an idea, Mr. Ahin, how much you expect to go into the sanitation sector every year?
In fact, from even conservative estimates, you should be expecting about 5% of GDP going into your sanitation sector. And you can imagine 5%. I mean, 5% is much, much, much higher than what we have been doing. I mean, let me tell you that we have been doing not more than 2%. I mean, the highest we have gone has been 1.4% of GDP in terms of budgetary allocations to the sanitation subsector. In fact, to the wash sector entirely. And that is not good enough. We are expecting that at least 5% will go into this sector to be able to achieve improvement in your sanitation services delivery.
Thank you very much, Atta Ahin, for joining us. He is the Vice Chairman for the Coalition of NGOs in Water and Sanitation. Now, security expert Colonel Festus Abuaje, retired, has called on security agencies to completely sweep through the various beaches in the country to ensure the explosion yesterday that injured some young people, some 4 children, never happens again. Now, on Monday, 4 children sustained various degrees of injuries after an explosion of a device we now know was a grenade they were playing with close to the seashore. Colonel Abuaje, retired, is of the opinion a swift and tactical investigation should commence immediately to rule out any threat of terrorist attack on the country as we inch closer to the elections. Let's listen to him.
There could be many reasons, or there could be many explanations for how the grenades got there. Obviously, somebody delivered the grenades to the beach. One possibility could be that they might have washed ashore from a canoe that was carrying those pieces, or they might have been taken there by a visitor in a bag or some other container, maybe forgotten, or they were deliberately left there, concealed in the sand or some other place, by somebody. But invariably, somebody needed to take the grenades to the place where the incident occurred. It's only the authorities, upon investigation, who may come close to either finding the reasons why and all the persons who were involved in depositing those grenades at that place. One assumption could be that the 4 pieces are not the only ones that might have been deposited at that locality. So there is need for explosive experts from the military and the police to examine that locality, to search using devices as well as with their own eyes observing, including talking to people in the area to try and find out whether there are some more of these hand grenades that are in the area. So if they are, one day they're going to go by some other physical action, either somebody ignorantly or mistakenly playing with a grenade, or something else pulling the pin out of the eye, and therefore releasing the safety catch, which then sets in motion the explosion. It could also have been delivered by somebody visiting the beach, who probably might have forgotten them, or it could have been concealed there by somebody to be retrieved later for some other purpose. So it's a bit difficult to find the reasons or establish the reasons why they were deposited at the place where they were deposited. But I believe already the authorities are fully, applying themselves to trying to get to the bottom of it. And indeed, as I said, to establish whether these 4 hand grenades were the only ones left there or whether there are more. And that search should also extend to the locality.
So are there more of such weapons in other areas? And how do we ensure the safety of the general public in situations like this? We will soon be speaking to a security and safety expert. But before then, let's recap what's transpired last week.
The loud sound was heard by everyone in and around the community. The time was 11 a.m., 4th August 2020.
I hear the thing, and the thing blast. As a explosion. So who just shot the gun like that? Where my master told you it's not a gun. But here there's a carpenter is knocking something for inside. What is not
each person had their interpretation of what it meant.
The only thing I heard was like, boom! I was like, Lord of His mercy, what is happening?
Kofi Koranteng, a mason returning from Usu, rushed to the scene.
It was bad. There was blood oozing from different body parts of these kids. The 7-year-old was the worst hit. Even in the hospital, they had to remove a lot of pellets from his back.
Uku Adams is the father of all 4 children, 1 boy, 4 girls, with ages between 5 and 12. The pig farmer is grateful to God that all 4 children survived the blast.
They left the grenade while they saw smoke rising from it. Luckily, they threw it far away from them. If it got any inch closer, it would have killed them.
Residents are scared of what the explosion could mean for the community.
I have 2 wonderful kids. We love the ocean. We love to visit the ocean. I love to go there and do my medication and pray. What if I don't know and I step on something? All I want to say is, please, to whoever is listening to me, please, to the authorities, please, scan around and find out what is really happening in Salabadi.
My concern, they should go inside the matter. I get to know the people who have a train over there, how they manage before dodge the bomb over there. After that, we get to know that they get another bomb too over there. So still, we are afraid about the area.
They have lots of questions for the authorities. Witnesses say the military visited last week and discovered even more grenades.
They find one of the bomb over there and the other one too. So the bomb.
The bomb here.
Yeah.
Can you show us which side?
This place and where the bushes, and they find one at where the gutter is.
So all in all, how many bombs were those?
There was 5 over here and 1 over there, and there was 1, 2 over here, so 7.
They said they come and find another bomb here.
How many military men did you notice?
Actually, the counts are coming. We can't count them.
There were several.
There are several. We can't
if you're giving an estimate, how many will you say? If you have to estimate, say about how much?
Because we are there, we are working.
The children's injuries mean more hospital bills for a father who is now struggling to put food on the table.
I must be the general public to help me out. I'm truly in a sad situation. He now has medical issues with his leg.
And 1 year can sika sema na say.
Oh, sika must say because any papa could must say 12 million. We can sika must say 12 million.
Now, in reaction to this, the police is asking that children be discouraged from handling unfamiliar objects. We've been joined by Adib Sani, Executive Director of Jatike Center for Human Security and Peace Building. He's joining us on Zoom. Welcome. Now, some security experts are alarmed, now calling for immediate investigation and scan of the beaches. What's your take?
Dazi, I think it is important we look closely into the issue. Indeed, Ghana is not a conflict hotspot like other countries in sub-Saharan Africa. So the issues of what we call in this situation unexploded ordnance is not something we are very much accustomed to. However, like my senior colleague, Colonel Festus has stated, it is highly likely these devices could have been left there by some criminals who perhaps would want to keep it under the radar, and so we don't want to have it in their homes, and so decided to leave it there. Secondly, I mean, that area is a military area as well, and could have also, based on just my initial assessment of what is going there, could have also left it there. So we could have a lot more of those, ordinances at that place. So first, I think to allay the fears of the persons living in, in around Labadi, we would have to do a general sweep of the area. But let us also be mindful of the fact that these devices, according to the UN, is very dangerous. And over 15,000 lives are lost every single year across the globe because of unexploded ordnances. In 2010, for instance, in Germany, during the Second World War, a bomb fell, it didn't explode. And because of what we call in military terms jarring, that is where you have the fuse depleting, and it becomes extremely vulnerable. Okay, so any little disturbance of the device can make it explode. So I think it is important that they use metal detectors or, these special devices used to sweep for other mines that might be in the area, just so some confidence is restored into the hearts of the people living in the community.
Now, I think that one of the key issues of concern is what you mentioned earlier, that we are not a conflict-prone country. We haven't had any recent terror activity to warrant the presence of such explosive devices there. But in your scanning of security reporters across the country, is there any recent happening that should form a pattern of, hoarding of weaponry or anything of that sort?
Well, the issue of arms proliferation is extremely real. Just that, Darcy, we have constricted the whole argument to small arms and light weapons, AK-47, G3, 9mm, pistols and all that. But we are also contending with the proliferation of these explosive devices, especially improvised explosive devices, which are usually devices that are manufactured and deployed against the conventional means. So what it means is someone can sit in his room, in any conflict hotspot in any part of the country and use potassium nitrates or a shell, combine it with some nails and perhaps even a pressure cooker, and you can make, an improvised explosive device, waiting to use it when the time arises. And because of the nature of intelligence and the fact that because we are getting towards an election, the security agencies are up and doing, some of these criminal elements might want a safe place to keep it.
That's so it very worrying.
Out of place to also say categorically that this might also be related.
Adib Sani is a security and safety expert. Unfortunately, we lost him there, and we will try and re-establish that connection a bit later. Still, right, so we understand we have him back. Let's just have a quick final word, Mr. Sani, on general safety. If we are walking by the beach or anywhere we could find anything like this, what do we do?
Of research into people's perceptions and attitudes towards security in Ghana. Unfortunately, we don't seem to be security conscious in this country. Some of us have had a reason to feel that maintaining security in Ghana is the preserve of the men and women in uniform. But I think going forward, there's the need for a collaboration, especially between the civilian population and the security agencies, so they are able to educate more and more people.
Right, thank you very much, Adib Sani, for joining us. You're still live on The Pulse with me, Daniel Daze. Still up ahead in our series of conversations with independent presidential aspirants, we speak to the man who took on a deputy minister.
Who travels 3,000 miles to be a whiner? We could have been whiners from our constituencies. We didn't need to come here. So this attitude has to change. If you want to engage us, then be serious about engaging us.
Kofi Koranteng, the man who delivered that memorable response to Robert Ahumka-Lindsay's whining comment, is our guest as we count down to the minority political parties and independent candidates debate. Stay with us. To December 7, the Imani Center for Policy and Education and your election headquarters brings to you the minority political parties and independent candidates election debate. Our guest today is Kofi Koranteng, another independent candidate who is confident of beating both the NDC and the MPP come December 7. Before I engage him though, watch this.
Nobody likes whiners. People that spend all the time whining all the time, I really get on people's nerves. So stop whining.
Really? Who travels 3,000 miles to be a whiner? We could have been whiners from our constituencies. We didn't need to come here. So this attitude has to change. If you want to engage us, then be serious about engaging us, because we're not here to play. Thank you.
Stop spending, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, this, please, we know it doesn't work. So stop whining all the time saying it doesn't work. If it worked, you probably wouldn't be sitting there. So nobody likes whiners, so stop whining.
You are right. We came here to sit with the decision makers to formulate policy to help us integrate us into the system. Where are the decision makers? You tell me, where are they? Where are they? They are nowhere around here to listen to us. So now, everything we talk about here is going to be second and third class. It's going to be washed out, and whatever is left is going to be passed on to the decision makers. Everybody comes in here and has an attitude that, oh, I got something better to do.
And we have Kofi Koranteng with us, joining us via Zoom live from the United States. It's good afternoon here. What time is it where you are?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. How you doing, Mr. Dazi?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Let's get to know you better, first of all. Who are you? Who is Kofi Koranteng? And why should anyone take you seriously as a presidential candidate?
Well, I'm a husband. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an advocate for what's right. I've worked at the wealth capital in finances on Wall Street. I have an engineering background, so the way I process problems is different. Everybody comes in with an attitude, you know, we have a problem, we have to have a meeting, we have to have a committee formed, we have to have, you know, let's get together, talk and talk and talk. We want to get to it. First thing I do, faced with a problem, you take a look at the facts, you evaluate the facts, and you make a conclusive decision which way it needs to go. So the mind is different, and understanding money, having worked in a financial capital of the world, I understand the attitude, I understand the culture, and it gives me an incredible edge in knowing systems also, how things ought to be in place. I know for a fact, if you were to count all the maybe hundreds of problems that you would say Ghana has, you will drive all these problems to one fact, that if our approach to it was a science-based, data-driven, human-centered consciousness and leadership, we will solve all these problems. And the reason that I know, because it's been done in Singapore, it's been done in Japan, it's been done in Malaysia. All these first world countries have proved that fact. But our 275 leaders in parliament, NDC and MPP, likes to have a circus and not get to the problems. And that's why we're sitting here 28 years into the Fourth Republic. We're being looked at and laughed at by the whole world.
Right.
Sitting on a pot of cash, all these resources, and don't have the mental capacity to make the right decisions to move this country forward.
Right.
And that's why I am different, and that's why we're going to fix the problem once and for all.
So science-based thinking, let's apply that thinking to, well, the first news story we did in this bulletin today, the drive to make Accra the cleanest city in Africa. How would you apply your method of approaching challenges to this specific one?
Well, that's a beautiful question. And Mr. Dazi, I'm glad you brought that up, because now my question to the president, who promised us that, was what data was he looking at when he promised that he was going to make Accra the cleanest city? See, once you have the data, then you'll be able to sit down with people who are incredibly versed at solving the problem, and we'll put them to charge to fix it. If you don't have the facts and the resources, then you cannot even begin to say you're going to be able to fix the problem. It's not something that you just get up and say you're going to fix the problem. You got to have the facts. We don't have the data points to be able to make that decision at this point. We know the consciousness to fixing it means, yes, you're going to have a distribution line of garbage collection. We have to really put everything underground in terms of sewer, in terms of garbage. We need to have merchants who use plastic pay more. We need to levy them for paying more using non-biodegradable receptacles for food, because that's the biggest problem. That's where the biggest problem is. We need to stop the importation of garbage into our country. Nobody worries about that. And so you cannot just go from nowhere and say you're going to make Accra the cleanest city when you haven't really resourced centers to be able to function. Because people have to eat, people have to live their lives. So what I'm saying is when you have all the data points, now if you were providing me with all the data points, then I'll tell you how it's going to be done and exactly how long it's going to take.
Right.
We don't know it. And if we were to go to the Ministry of Interior or Agriculture or whatever sector, they wouldn't have the data either. So you cannot just say by saying stuff. You would just be talking. Okay. You need data, Mr. Dazi.
Okay, so it's a fair point that you raised, that we need data to inform a promise like making Accra the cleanest city in Africa. But we do have a few points, and I was just having a conversation actually with the vice chair of the Coalition of NGOs in Water and Sanitation, made some very interesting revelations. We spend only about 1.4% of our GDP when we are dedicating it to the entire wash sector. Unfortunately, Ghana has seen about 15,000 cases of cholera on the average every year. We have about $300 million dedicated to the sanitation sector alone, which does not seem to be having as much dividend as it is. There is however, a mindset that perhaps we have efficient waste management companies. So the data, yes, is there. We have seen that we have 11 landfill sites in Accra. All of them are full. So there is an indication of what the data is. But my question is that, do we have an idea how to approach the problem? How are we going to approach it?
Absolutely. Mr. Dazi, listen to me. This is very simple. It's simpler than you think. You see, everything you've talked about in the last couple of minutes about this data, it's not really tied to anything. It's not tied to anything. See, the first point is you need to have an integrated national ID and address system. You know why you need to have that? Because we need to start holding people accountable. Now, you cannot hold people accountable if you don't know them and you don't know where they live. That's the first problem. You see, so everything you've talked about, good, not good enough.
But we have seen investments, and this government's first year in power saw the rollout of the Ghana Post GPS system, which is a national addressing system, and then the National Identification Card. The National Identification Authority has issued millions of cards now, which is the identification system. So they are being applied, no?
No, it's not. And you're talking only half the facts. Listen, in the just completed voter registration, 80% of the national card, of the Ghana card, was based on people, guess what, guaranteeing for other people. Okay, 80%. And 63% of the people who just got registered are also another huge segment of people who have been guaranteed for by somebody else. So now if you take a look at that process, it tells you that 90%, approximately, almost 90% of people are new to this whole process. So they're not on the system yet to be able to say confidently that we have an integrated national ID and address system. Now, the beauty and the genius of this is not just having the ID. That makes your point, and you would be right. The genius of this is making it integrated. You will not be able to tell me if the system is integrated to the police, to sanitation, to Ministry of Education, to all the other agencies. Because if it's not in sync, then you cannot hold the person, because then, see, the strength of that whole unit, that whole system, is at the weakest link. You cannot tell me, and I know you cannot tell me, because there isn't such a thing.
Right. Right.
See? So just by you having an address system, Anansi, something that's hanging out in the sky somewhere, doesn't mean anything, because it's not tied to anything.
Okay.
So we're not just having processes. We have to have processes that's linked and meshed together to make sense, to be interpreted and to be applied to our lives.
Mr.
So
Koranteng,
it's a whole different consciousness.
Mr. Koranteng, thanks so much. But you just mentioned the voter ID registration. Have you registered for the voter ID card?
It's going to be done. It's no problem, because once the Electoral Commission have made plans that anybody who's coming into town can go into a regional office and get that done. So that's not an issue. You do realize that there's a 50-day cutoff, that if you register within 50 days of the next election, you can't vote in that election. I'm aware of that, and it's not going to happen, because we'll be at the debate in the next couple of days.
Great. Beyond that, how are you campaigning? You're in the U.S. and you're in Ghana. How are you campaigning?
Well, because of the COVID situation, you got to understand we are, it's purely social media. But once we get into town, we're going to start combing the whole phase of all the regions, going visiting with different regions, talking about what we're doing, and letting Ghanaians know we're going to be able to come see you one-on-one at your office and talking with the plans that we have and how we're going to be able to do it. So for now, it's basically social media, because you have to understand, science-based, right? When you look at 7 million people being between the ages of 18 to 35, and 7.4 million being the ages of 36 to 55, 85–90% of these people spend most of their time on social media. So that's the chunk of our market. So,
but the data actually shows from the National Communications Authority that individual Facebook accounts, like individual users of Facebook in Ghana, is just around 4 million, which, you know, is very small an amount of the number of people who would vote in the election. If you consider we just registered 16.6 million people to vote ending yesterday. So there is still a lot of ground to cover. Mr. Koranteng?
Absolutely. We're not, listen, we're not saying the job is done. We're saying that from what we've been able to do and the results that we're seeing on social media, it's incredibly encouraging. And we're going to be able to cause serious damage with what we're experiencing. And we're happy with what we've been able to do.
So did you say you'll be in town for the debate, or you'll join us remotely?
We're hoping to be there live. So you know, one of my biggest dreams in life is to shake your hand in person. So I'm hoping.
One of your biggest dreams in life. Okay. Yeah. I'm flattered. I'm flattered. But the debate is on Thursday. It's in a couple of days. So, I mean, even if you're in town, there'll probably be quarantine, but it'll be good to, you know, have you around. Thank you so much, Kofi Koranteng, for joining us. Independent presidential candidate, rooting everything on science and data. Trust me, this should give you an idea that the independent presidential candidates and minority political parties debate will be amazing. We'll take a few messages. There's more on the Pulse after this. You're live on the Pulse with me, Daniel Daze. Now, in the next 6 months, a voluntary organization, Go Hope Ghana, will be distributing nose masks and other sanitary items to people at selected lorry stations across the country. The aim of the initiative is to ensure that persons who are constantly exposed but seem to be apathetic about the existence of COVID-19 are protected, and to also reach out to those without the means to buy PPEs. Secretary Emmanuel Adai is here with me in studio with more. Emmanuel, welcome to the Pulse.
Thank you very much, Daniel.
So let's talk first of all, why did you pick lorry stations?
Yeah, it appears nobody is talking about lorry stations. But even before the outbreak of COVID, you could hear a lot of road safety campaigns. People were talking about that. These days, well, you don't hear too much about accidents. I don't know whether they are not happening or they are not being publicized, but you don't hear too much about road accidents. However, our fear is that people meet a lot in buses, in trotros, you know, while traveling. People gather a lot. There's a lot of activity at the lorry stations and bus stops. You see drivers' mates, you see the drivers, the bookmen, the hawkers, the passengers, and so on. Many of them are not protected, and they don't seem to care. So we think that the problem is enormous. You can take it from any angle, but we decided that while people may arrive safe at home without accidents, they can arrive safe at home with COVID, which can also be very, very troublesome afterwards. That's the reason why we want to pitch ourselves with road safety.
Okay, yeah. Okay. No, you want to replicate this across the country.
Exactly.
And you're doing this with the Road Safety Commission.
We are extending invitations to them for support.
Okay.
I mean, because our focus is on COVID awareness, not necessarily road safety in its traditional sense.
I just wanted to get that clarity because what sponsorship are you using? What sorts of funding?
At the moment, we are still appealing for public support because we don't have any funding anymore. And as I talk, some organizations and institutions have already donated a few items that we are going to start with. But we don't have any funds on our own. So we keep extending the appeal to philanthropists, to institutions, to corporate Ghana to support. Because it's about life. We need people alive. Go Hope is to provide hope for the marginalized. But then if they are not alive, there's no hope for them. So that is why we want to go that path. What we have seen is that we have done some observations in a couple of transport lorry stations in the cities and across some of the regions.
Okay.
What we see is that there are people there not wearing nose masks. Honestly, I spent about 5 minutes, just counted about 288 people, and about 112.
In 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Because
it's a very busy place. Just here at this Kaneshi station, a circle here.
Yeah.
And I would say about 113 of them were not wearing nose masks at all. About 117 of them were wearing nose masks, and then halfway, under their chin. The rest were not wearing anything at all. There were hand washing stations, advantage points at the station. I decided to observe 2 of them closest to the main entrance into the station. I spent 10 minutes to do that. Not a single person washed their hands under under those buckets there. It means that we are getting too relaxed with COVID-19, and that is our worry and that is our fear. So we think we should move into some of the stations and talk to the people there, the travelers, the hawkers, the drivers there, as well as management of the stations, because sometimes the facility will be there. If nobody directs you to go and watch, people just keep entering and no. So
it's not just the distribution of masks, it's also education and sensitization. It's
education and sensitization, and even advocacy. We'll be doing public, policy engagements, across various levels. For instance, we are fumigating and disinfecting, churches and schools and markets. What about cars? The buses that we travel in? Because people meet in there, people don't wear their masks, people do even arguments there. They even fight the mates for over change or over the actual fare and so on. People are exposed. It's difficult to get out of a car without touching the seat. Yeah. Nobody gives anybody hand sanitizers when they are entering the buses. Yeah. So we think the buses too need to be disinfected regularly. We don't know how often, but then the experts that's why we're going to be doing the engagement. Should there be a policy for periodic disinfection of, let's say, trotros and other buses for road transport? Okay. And if that should be, what mechanisms are going to be put in place? How is government going to facilitate, that kind of regular disinfection and so on? So it's a whole package. It's not only distributing. Thank you. Nose masks or sanitizers. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Emmanuel. So you want to go hope, go space hope, if you want to support this initiative as well. You're live on the Pulse here with me, Daniel Dazi. We move to other stories, and government has promised to complete the construction of 11 health facilities across the country before the end of 2020. That's according to the Health Minister, Kweku Agyeman-Menu, speaking during the sword cutting for the construction of a 400-bed maternity and gynecology facility at the Korle Bu Teaching Hospital. The minister stressed that these projects, which are not included in Government Agenda 88, are at various levels of completion and would be commissioned in Bekwai, Tepa, Buipe, Somenya, and some 7 other communities.
We have come a long way in building our healthcare infrastructure through successive governments, but the gap remains huge and still needs to be filled. As you may be aware, the government's delivery program will see the completion of 11 healthcare facilities by close of the year at the following locations within the country: Somenya, Weta in the Volta region, Sola Tinakalba, Bupe and Tolong. Bekwai District Hospital will be completed. Tepa is about to be completed. Nsoko will be completed. Trifopras will be completed. Kumaku will be completed. And from now, we're even getting some place ready for case management for coronavirus. So all these projects, Mr. President, you will have to commission them before the elections.
Now, on the new 400-bed facility at the Korle Bu Teaching Hospital, President Akufo-Addo said the project is in fulfillment of a 2018 promise he made to the management of Korle Bu to help reconstruct the block to better position it to facilitate Ghana's progress in quality healthcare delivery. The 145 million euro facility to be constructed by Meshes Hebedi JV will replace the dilapidated 6-story maternity building, which is currently being used.
Cut the sword for the construction and equipment of 2 major facilities, namely a 12-story, 400-bed maternity and gynecological center and a 2-story, 101-bed urology and nephrology center. The commencement of work on these 2 projects, in addition to the reactivation of construction work on the abandoned 750-bed maternity and children's block at the Komfo-Anokye Teaching Hospital in Kumasi, will significantly reduce maternal and neonatal mortality rates in our country. They are also further testimony to the commitment of government to improve our country's health care infrastructure and move us steadily towards the goal of achieving universal health coverage for all. Korle Bu, over its 97 years of existence, has served as a center of excellence in teaching, research, and the provision of high-level specialized healthcare services to Ghanaians and to persons from beyond our shores. This hospital, which is the third largest in sub-Saharan Africa and the leading referral center in the country, is challenged with inadequate infrastructure, equipment, and cutting-edge technology to enable it respond adequately to the ever-increasing demand for its specialist services. Indeed, on my recent visit to Korle Bu, when I commissioned the intensive care unit of the National Reconstructive Plastic Surgery and Burn Center for the hospital, I was struck by the poor state of the maternity block. I promise to help remedy the situation, as the current state of the building is not fit for purpose. Today's ceremony is a fulfillment of the pledge I made.
Parliament now, and Parliament has begun work on the Security and Intelligence Bill 2020 to streamline Ghana's national security architecture and spell out appropriate lines of reporting. Members of Parliament's Defence and Interior Committee are confident the bill, when passed into law, will help avert situations like the violence that happened during the Ayawaso West Wuogon by-election. The bill will repeal the Security and Intelligence Act 1996, which the committee observes has not responded adequately to emerging national security challenges. Joseph Opoku joins us. Joseph, what exactly does the bill seek to do?
So, as we gather from the report of the Committee on Defense and Interior, the bill is seeking to provide for matters relating to the National Security Council, as well as the establishment of regional and district security councils, and also to specify the agencies that are responsible for security situations in the country. And the bill will seek to repeal the Securities and Intelligence Act, as you said, and help establish the required national security architecture to address emerging national security challenges, also taking into recognition issues having to do with the general security of the country. And so from the additional details that we're gathering from the documents that have actually come to Parliament, when this bill actually comes into law, we'll see a situation where, when it comes to the reporting channels as far as the National Security Secretariat is concerned, and when it comes to the work of maybe the National Security Coordinator in reference to maybe a National Security Minister or any minister responsible for national security, this bill actually is clearly spelled out the specific methods and the frequency of reporting that needs to be done. And for James Agalga, who is ranking member on the Defense and Interior Committee, this was a major issue that resulted in what we saw in the Ayawaso West Wuogon constituency with regards to the concern having to do with the security agencies moving in. And as Mr. Agalga sought to explain, folks, including the National Security Minister and even the Minister of Interior, not being aware of the deployment that had actually happened on the day of that particular election. And he thinks that once this particular bill gets passed, some of those situations will be avoided.
Joseph Opoku, thank you very much for joining us from Parliament with the very latest on that law. And up next on the Pulse is Sports with Gary L. Smith. I'll be back after. Stay with us. The National Youth Authority will be celebrating this year's 2020 event from the 12th to the 14th of August at the Alisa Hotel in Accra, where the First Lady will be in attendance. Nelson Osuansa, the Deputy CEO of the YEA, joins me in studio. Good afternoon, Nelson. How are you doing?
Good afternoon, very much. Good afternoon. It is NYE and not YEA.
The NYA,
National
yes,
Youth Authority. I understand, can be confused.
And then with the Youth Employment Agency.
Yes,
pardon me. Thank you very much for that. So how's the NYA doing?
NYA is doing well. I mean, it's the pet body of young people in this country, backed by law at 2016 at 939 that established the authority. But the authority, I should say, has been in existence since 74. And it used to be called, if you've heard about the National Youth Council, that is the council that has metamorphosed into the authority now. So it is stronger now, and it has a more stronger legal backing to undertake its core mandate of seeking the interests of the Ghanaian youth. I think that's the core.
Seeking the interests of the Ghanaian youth. It sounds great, but it sounds very broad. How are you able to go about this?
I mean, we've been asked quite severally about how the operational remit is like. And I always tell people that we work from archaeology to zoology so far as the youth is concerned. So whatever that concerns this country, I'm sure concerns the Ghanaian youth as well. And that is also our preoccupation. We are interested in the well-being of the Ghanaian students, the health of the Ghanaian youth, the jobs and the business of Ghanaian people, and so on and so forth. So you can go on and on and on and on. Every single issue, developmental issue, that affect the very fabric of the Ghanaian society. Also, in a way, affect the Ghanaian youth as well. So you cannot distinguish between issues, exclusive issues of youth and others of other categories or cohorts of the Ghanaian population. Almost every single youth here in Ghana is concerned about education, is concerned about jobs, business, well-being, health, and so on. Okay. That is exactly what we do there.
So on next week, that's from the 12th to the 14th, that's next week, right?
Tomorrow.
That's
tomorrow. That is on the 12th is tomorrow.
I don't know what's happening to me today. Pardon me. So from the 12th to the 14th, we have a great program of activities lined up, I'm sure, to celebrate this momentous occasion.
Exactly so. We have, that is tomorrow.
That's
that is
tomorrow.
the
That's
actual
from Wednesday
day.
through to Friday.
Yeah, through to Friday.
That's
but actual day set aside by the United Nations for the commemoration of and recognition of young people across the globe is the 12th of August of every year. So every year, all member countries of the United Nations set aside this day to celebrate its young people. And I think it's important we highlight. Most often when we sit here or any other platform and we are talking young people, perhaps we'll be talking about deviance. We'll be talking about other antisocial behaviors of young people. But I think that the contributions of young people have not been recognized largely by the larger population. And it is high time we begin to highlight the contribution and the significant impact the young people are making in the country and across the world. I should say that if you look at the legal definition of a youth, which is 15 to 35 years, you and I would agree that these are the very critical population within our society. 15 years, they are very active in school, throughout to their SHS, all the way through their the university, their national service. That's the time many young people are also looking at grabbing jobs and grabbing wives and husbands and looking for lucrative jobs. It's a very critical population. And we also say that that is the same category of population that is very exuberant. They have the energies, they have the fresh ideas, the new skills and technology, and they are the ones that are driving the economy. And that is why we think that we haven't really recognized the youth well. Unfortunately, it has always been about the deviant behaviors, the antisocial behaviors, and the youth are not listening and they are not obeying. I think we need to take the dialogue beyond this and be looking at the broader picture.
Which is why I'm sure the International Youth Day is
very significant. But we need to also use that same opportunity to recognize the challenges, one of which I've mentioned, that we are not including them well in terms of national discourse, national development discourse. If we are doing so, there's a saying, in Chinese saying that people support what they help create. If we are bringing the youth on board in the discourse of national agenda, I can be so sure that if you now roll it out, there will be more embracing, there will be more challenge to make sure that that idea succeeds.
How do you think that we should bring about this this involvement, as you call it?
Yes. Fortunately, this year, the theme is suggesting that. The theme is simply saying that youth engagement for global action. So in effect, we're saying that if you want to take any global action in mitigating any problem, then you need to engage your young people. And we are starting and giving the platform this year to the young people to begin to dialogue on sensitive national issues. So beyond tomorrow, which is on the 12th, which will be graced by Her Excellency Mrs. Bawumia, we are on the 13th and 14th, also setting aside periods for young people to dialogue on education. They are dialoguing on jobs and business. They are dialoguing on governance and elections, as well as in hospitality and entertainment.
Where are you gathering them from?
We have youth groups. Fortunately, the authority, we have been mandated by the law to recognize and register all youth groups across the country. So we have a compendium of youth groups that we work with, and we are following on that compendium. Any other youth-based organization, youth-focused organization that is working in the arena of youth, we are also bringing them on board, and also pulling other young people from different other sectors to come and dialogue with the young people.
Where will this take place?
Aliza Hotel.
From the 12th to the 14th. So exactly. What do we expect to get out of the dialogue? After the dialogue, what happens
After
next?
the dialogue, that is a very important question, I should say, because after the dialogue, we don't want the issues raised to stay in the four walls of the conference room. We want to lift it up. Unfortunately, you know, this season is a very critical season for all of us, because a lot of young people are waiting to hear from the politicians what they have for them in their manifestos, and we haven't seen that. We want whatever dialogue decisions that will come out be factored into the manifestos of the political parties as well as national policy. So we don't want you. So at the end of the day, we are coming out with a communique, and that communique is supposed to now help government to now begin to listen to young people, their views, their suggestions moving forward, as well as the political parties factoring it into their manifestos moving into the 2021.
That's definitely something we want to look at. Nelson Osuansa, thank you so much for
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
This afternoon, you're still live on The Pulse with me, Daniel Dazi. Many thanks for joining us. For more news, log on to myjoyonline.com.